It's best to under-promise and over-deliver. Because disappointment doesn't necessarily come from a bad product, it's usually missed expectations. The Mazda CX-70 learned this lesson the hard way. There was extensive buildup for this SUV that, on the surface, is just a CX-90 with a third row delete. But is there more to it than that? The first thought I had is that by eliminating the seats, we would have more space. But no, I busted out the measuring tape. Dimensionally, these are exactly the same. So where did the space go? There's a big foam piece underneath that you can store things in, which I guess does earn a slight versatility advantage, but otherwise, if you fold the third row of the CX-90, it's just as practical as this. But the close relation to the 90 does lend this some advantages over mainstream rivals. The design and material choice look and feel better than any of its direct competitors. In fact, the quality here isn't dusted by real luxury brands, and it does this without making you use a touchscreen to tell your passenger that their fly is down. We have plenty of physical inputs for the HVAC and even the infotainment, and they all give a little tactile feedback. The seats are comfortable enough too. I definitely want more thigh support. The seat bottoms are a little short, but I do think they should be agreeable for a wide variety of people. My bigger knock with ergonomics is that this still has a very wide center console, which does make it feel more tight despite the actual dimensions of the vehicle. And I like the admittedly oversimplified infotainment system. Some tasks add an extra step, but the dial means I never lift a finger, and it is a touchscreen when you're using CarPlay or Android Auto, which is wireless as well. And if you're willing to push past $50,000, or you're buying one before the cheap trims become available, these come pretty well equipped. You can get ventilated seats up front, heated in the back, along with a solid Bose sound system, a 360 view camera, and a heated steering wheel, to name a few. It's also available with a red interior, something you can't have in the CX-90, but interestingly, the 3-row is the only one to offer ventilated rear seats. That also comes with a panoramic sunroof on most. Feature for feature, the CX-90 is cheaper. Ignoring that confusing fact, I do think this justifies the price tag. Briefly, I'd like to thank the folks over at Royal South Mazda in Bloomington, Indiana. They're a small, honest dealership with a friendly staff and a good inventory. If you're in the market, check them out. So this does luxury SUV stuff better than you'd think. But for a huge 3-row family ride, the 90 let me down a little in third row space and storage. Competitors from Honda, Hyundai, and Toyota all have their priorities more set on families than trying to seduce affluent Acura or Audi buyers, who barely acknowledge the existence of Mazda. But since the CX-70 is less obligated to be a bus, the luxury first premise becomes a little more sensible. Moving into the back, I have about the same space, but that's not an issue for me at 6'3". On the outside, we see darkened accents and reworked plastic. While mostly tasteful, from some angles it looks a little awkward and bulbous, and the dimensions of a Honda Pilot won't exactly make you look or feel youthful when driving it. On the road, there's a lot to love about the CX-70, but there's one glaring aspect that will almost certainly keep this a niche vehicle. For most people buying a 2-row SUV, there's no need to be driving a vehicle larger than most school drop-off lane mainstays. It's like enlisting Captain America to help you open a pickle jar. However, its relation to the CX-90 lends it quite a few advantages, one of which would be the powertrain choices. So later this year, you will be able to get a low output 3.3 liter turbocharged inline 6. It still makes 280 ponies and 330 pound-feet of torque. Paired up with an 8-speed wet clutch automatic, it got me to 60 in 6.9 seconds with the CX-90. The towing capacity lands on the better side of the segment, and for it being just a mild hybrid, efficiency is surprisingly good. Though Mazda also makes a PHEV with a middling 26 miles of range. It provides similar acceleration with a sharper response and a worse engine note. Yet this is probably the powertrain I'd buy, not because it uses a more proven 2.5 liter 4-cylinder or because of its efficiency advantage. Instead, it's because of the $7,500 lease-only credit, which makes for an extremely low monthly payment for a car that runs over 50 grand. But if you desire more, Mazda also makes a high-output inline 6. And this is actually my first time driving it. and it does have a good amount of mid-range torque. It's not lightning fast. It's more about effortless passing power, and the inline six easily has the most refined engine note out of any SUV in the mainstream class. And Mazda's worked on the 8-speed automatic as well. It doesn't seem as laggy as it used to be, and it's a little bit smoother off the line too. Not the most reactive transmission, but I'm a fan of how traditional this feels, the good gearing, and that this is technically rear biased. So all of these have all-wheel drive, but the engine is mounted longitudinally. And this allows the CX-70 to really feel balanced. This powertrain combined with the accurate steering does help this feel just a step above the Honda Passport or new Toyota Crown Signia. For such a big car, you really only get a lot of body roll as the speed goes up. Then you really begin to feel the heft of this. The steering is slow, but it's precise. It also has a heavy weight to it with a little feedback. It requires more effort at low speed than what some may prefer, but it is natural feeling. And it leaves me curious to see what this rear bias platform could be like in a smaller package. And on uneven, broken pavement, the CX-70 rides exactly like the CX-90. I've heard from Mazda that there were slight dampening changes, but it's not something that's noticeable even really driving them back to back. I think what I can maybe feel is slightly heavier steering. The ride takes large bumps on the chin well. It's smooth and comfortable, but still not the most forgiving car in the class. But I think this more taut approach works a little bit better, again, with a two-row SUV that's a little less family-oriented than the 90. And at highway speed, road noise is kept muffled. Wind noise is pronounced, especially if you have the crossbars, but the ride is smooth and steering hardly requires any correction. This feels like a luxury cruiser. Seeing out of it is pretty easy too. And you'll have a full suite of active driving aids, including lane centering on everything except for the base, which is an advantage over the 90. This also performs well in crash tests, and if you want to cruise for a long time, it's far too early for me to make a call on reliability. But in the first year with the 90, there was a recall on the steering and the PHEV's powertrain for lagginess. Mazda also addressed a kind of hesitant and jerky transmission, but forums and carcomplaints.com reveal mirrors that shake at freeway speeds, along with buggy active driving aids and a squeaky front suspension as other common problems with the CX-90. Owner reviews on cars.com and Edmunds show mixed emotions. It seems like Mazda is trying to address these things, so CX-70 owners should experience less of these woes. If you have cargo needs that outweigh your passenger needs, the CX-70 could be a nice alternative for you. And it is a unique option in the two-row mid-size segment because most of its competitors aren't this large. You could see it as that. Or you could see it as paying the same amount or more money for an SUV with less seats and insignificant cargo gains. I think both of those outlooks are valid, but either way, I think a name like the CX-90 Sport would have made this less confusing. And this should have been a quieter release. Even Mazda themselves told investors in 2023 that this would be just a two-row CX-90. The build-up garnered more attention than it deserved. So if the product is honestly good, was the only thing disappointing here the fact that it was automotive clickbait? No. It's nice to have options to choose from, but the CX-70 leaves a big hole in the lineup. And I think that's what frustrated people the most here, because some folks, after hearing news of this car, were waiting to buy it. They were wanting something like the overseas CX-60, a car that has a more manageable size that's still more substantial and larger than something like a CX-5 or 50. Instead, Mazda now has 3 compact crossovers of varying shapes and 2 surprisingly agile land yachts. Maybe a redesigned CX-5 can address this gap, but for now, if you're looking for an upscale two-row SUV that comes at a reasonable cost with maximum size, or you simply wanted a CX-90 but despised having 3 rows, here you go. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like to help me take on the elusive YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more fun, detailed car content without fluff. Consider becoming a channel member for an additional podcast and to help me take on bigger projects. I'll catch you in the next one. It's supposed to be done by when? Dude, we have nothing. Buy me some time, please. We have a new SUV coming out. Get ready.
Next year, it'll be here.
Okay, maybe after this new SUV, but next year?
It'll be ready, for sure.
Here it comes.